Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am your chair, Councilwoman Sage Turner, and I'd like to welcome you to the Thursday, September 23rd Asheville Regional Housing Consortium meeting. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently these days. We are streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub. This is accessible through our Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city's website. It's also linked on this committee's page. We have a dial-in option for the public to listen and comment live by phone today. That number is 855-925-2801, and the meeting code is 8763. For those of you out there listening today, welcome. I'm going to go through a roll call, and I'm going to introduce all the committee members that are participating. If you can, just make sure your microphone generally stays on mute. If you want to open up and say a hello real quick, that would be great. And I'm going to go down this roster in the way it's listed on our spreadsheet here. So first up, Ben Woody with the City of Asheville.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Archie, can you give us a hello?
Oh, I'm sorry. Good morning.
Good morning. Jessica Trotman. Jessica not here. Okay, Matthew Cable.
Good morning.
Morning. Andrew Mayrone.
Good morning.
William High. Don't think I saw William. Caitlin Finkel. Oh, there's William joining. William, give us a quick hello. We'll count you present. Yeah, I'll come back to William. Caitlin Finkel, did we hear you?
And
Okay.
Sage, I'm not sure if Erin is here with Brevard. Caitlin actually took a different job recently over in Maggie Valley, so that name will probably come off.
So yeah, part of this, as we go through this, each time we need to kind of do a membership check. I have not met most of you in person, so I'm still jumping around a big screen of names here. Okay, so Erin Bland. I saw Sonia Flynn.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Jacob Comfort. Eric Warren. Tyler Henry.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning. Forrest, are you with us today?
Morning.
Yes. Good morning. I saw Karen Kino. Karen, I see you. If you could give us a quick hello. Okay, we're going to come back to Karen. Eric Rufa.
Yeah, good morning.
I think I heard you.
Yep, I'm here.
You're very quiet. You may need to adjust your volume. Councilman Blakely, are you here with us today? Okay, Robin Merrill.
Good morning.
Good morning. Alex Carmichael. Eric Hardy. Alan McNeil. And we saw Kate Hayes.
Morning.
Okay, Karen Kina, are you able to hear us, and can you unmute and say hello? And William High, we see you, but we cannot hear you. Okay, great, thank you. So Karen may end up joining us. All right, 1 second. Thank you all for checking in and announcing who's here. If you see anything on that list that needs to be adjusted, go ahead and you can just maybe message or email me and we'll get it updated. Okay, so we are on to, for those of you at home, I'm going to call out parts of the agenda so you can follow along with us. And so right now we are on to item number, just a second, item number 2. I'm not sure what item number 1 is, framework for meeting, but I'm moving to item number 2 unless there's a problem with that. Approval of the minutes. Did anybody have an opportunity to look at the minutes, and are there any comments, questions, or concerns?
This is Forrest, and I reviewed the minutes, and my only change was on the list of attendees. I think it's listed as Forrest Gentry, and it should be Forrest Gillum.
Oh, thank you, Forrest. Sorry about that.
Okay.
We can get that fixed. Anyone else? And hearing not, can I get a motion?
Sage, this is Ben Woody. Move to approve.
This is Forrest. So moved.
Great. Okay, I'm going to try and do this roll call vote. Trying to remember who is here and who wasn't here. Just one second. Hey, Ben Woody,
Aye.
Archie,
Aye.
Matthew Cable,
Aye.
Andrew Mayrone,
Aye.
William High,
I don't vote when the others are here. Thanks.
Sage, William
Oh,
is our
alternate.
alternate. We
Gotcha.
have two voting
Yeah,
members.
thank you.
Okay.
I see that now. Thank you. Sonia Flynn,
Aye.
I believe Jacob and Aaron were not here. Forrest,
Aye.
Karen. Karen is still not with us. Eric,
Which one?
Eric Rufa.
Aye.
Okay, you are still a little bit quiet. Robin,
Aye.
Kate Hayes.
Aye.
I think I got everybody, right? Okay, great. So the minutes are approved. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to the next item. Well, we just kind of went over the membership, so if you have any changes, send them to me. So we're going to move on to item number 3, which is new business and reallocation meeting. So as you all know, we're here because one of our tax credit applications has been awarded and we are going to reallocate from our original plan. Let me go ahead and get this item open. We have Paul D'Angelo with us. Paul, did you want to open this up or say anything about this as we get started?
Sure. Good morning, Sage. And so everyone should have a staff memo in front of them regarding the second round allocation, as well as a link to the allocation spreadsheet. I do want to be able to take a couple minutes before going to presentations just to talk about a couple activities that are listed on the staff memo for clarity regarding some previous program income funding, as well as an adjustment to the final award amount. So if you will bear with me, I can go into that discussion. Just for reference, in 3B, last year it came up, I believe, about kind of keeping track of the emails we were sending out and really reaching out to the community. So we tried to share the emails that were sent out, as well as the reminders that were sent out and who we tried to reach out to via email, as well as bringing up this second round allocation as much as we could to any meetings we attended. So briefly regarding 2 things on the consortium document, when the email was sent out, we talked about $225,000 that was originally listed on having to come out of this year's second round allocation. So for clarity here, we wanted to give everybody more to that story, which was in July of 2018, Battery Park Apartments paid back their $225,000 home loan from 2004, but there was conflicting documentation about how the funds were recorded. Attempting to correct this issue last summer in 2020, the funds were reported to HUD as program income and included in fiscal year 2021 reallocation that went out the door last year. Staff just confirmed this August that the money had already been earmarked for reallocation in fall of 2018. The city is relinquishing the 10% home admin, $22,500 for that, but $202,500 will still need to be assigned from the current reallocation to make up for that overallocation last year. We worked closely with the HUD field office to verify a lot of this. The HUD field office has confirmed that this is a good solution, and the ABCLT has agreed to have the funds substituted for their 2021 award, still pending contract, to be able to have funding to fully award their contract. Kind of as a bottom line, we over allocated last year's funding due to conflicting documentation on the program income from Battery Park, and need to make up for that over allocation in this year's funding to fully fund the CLT contract. So we did want to take the time, it was in the email, but we wanted to further explain that to the consortium this morning. And with that, I can pause and happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Paul. And it is in our staff memo and email as well. Did anybody have any questions or comments for Paul about that? Okay. I don't see any hands. Okay,
So
great.
Thank you. And again, still here for questions. The second talks about the reallocation on the funding. So on the emails that were sent out, originally we stated $437,862 were available to reallocate after the tax credits as well as the previous program income issue discussed. By adding that $22,500 that we'll forgo, we now have $460,000 to reallocate in home funding. And we can talk about those recommendations when, Sage, whenever you or the consortium is ready, about how we recommended to do that $460,000. Staff had also awarded $40,614 to contingency in March, which can now also be reallocated, technically giving us $500,000 overall. We have a recommendation on what to do with that additional $40,000 that I can go through either now or when we go to after the presentations. But we did want to clarify that with the $22,500 coming back, we now have $460,000. And that's the true number that we actually reallocated in the spreadsheet. But we do have an additional $40,000 to talk this morning. Staff has the recommendation on that, but of course, that's all a consortium decision. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions as well. And I appreciate the time for the clarity.
Thank you, Paul. Lots of information and numbers to follow there. I don't have any questions and I was able to review it. Does anybody have any questions before we go into kind of recommendations and possibly hearing from applicants?
I have a quick question. Paul, did we ever get feedback or information on why the other projects weren't funded?
Oh, from the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency? We don't, except we just get a notification that they weren't awarded. Usually a lot of that has to do, I'm sure as most people know, that we usually get 1 or 2 maximum in this region.
Kate,
Good question.
Kate, this is Andrew from Buncombe County, and I would concur with Paul. It's often difficult even for the developers to really get clear feedback on why a project was awarded or not awarded, and there's a little bit of guesswork. You know, we at Buncombe County and the city as well, traditionally our jurisdictions only get 9% award a year. There was a Transylvania County project that didn't come to the consortium that did get an award this year. The thought was that some of the disaster recovery counties in the eastern part of the state perhaps received a little more of an allocation than the counties in our region, but it's an opaque process, and I wish we all knew what went on behind the screen. But yeah, that's the little bit of feedback we got as well.
Okay, thank you.
It sure would be helpful to better understand why some are chosen and some are not. I agree. And I guess this is...
Sage, if I could interject one other thing, you know, what we've done at Buncombe County, I think what you guys and others in these communities could do is submit comments or at least view the QAP. The North Carolina Housing Finance Agency is taking comments for their draft QAP for next year. In that, you can kind of see their scoring system. We at Buncombe County, I think Haywood and Transylvania have also submitted letters requesting that we be considered disaster recovery counties because of Tropical Storm Fred. But if you feel that there are certain things that your community would specifically benefit from, you can influence it there. And it's something that we've started as a practice.
That's a great practice too. Always reviewing and commenting on future QAPs is great. Sean, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sage. I just as the one of the applicants, I'm with Commonwealth Development representing Fairhaven Summit, the 9% application that was awarded funding. I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts and insight because we look a lot into the scoring, and so there were a couple of factors that I think might be helpful to kind of understand at least my experience of what happens in the selection process behind the scenes. And so there were 2 things on scoring. It's always challenging in North Carolina to get a 9% award, because it ultimately, they've made a change in the QAP, the draft QAP for this year, but a lot of it has to come down to two factors. How applicants play their bonus points. And this year you had 2 bonus points to award. And the other has to do with how your credit request falls relative to the average credit request for, in the instance of Buncombe County, the metro region. And each county in the metro region only receives enough credit in Buncombe County only receives enough credit allocation for 1 award. It's about 700 and something thousand, I think it was this year. And so there were 3 full applications submitted in Buncombe County. There was Fairhaven Summit, and then Mountain Housing submitted 2 applications, Lakeshore Villas in Arden, and then Pentland Place in Asheville. And so, as I recall, our application ended up, in order to receive maximum points for credits per unit, you had to fall within 4% of the average request for the metro region. And so our application actually fell at about 5 point something percent, which gave us 1 point, not 2 points. As I recall from the analysis that we did, Pentland Place actually fell within 4% of the average. And so they got 2 points there. And Lakeshore Villas was very low at 100. Anyway, they did not get any points. But Mountain Housing did not play any of their bonus points on either of their Buncombe County applications, and we played both of our bonus points on our Fairhaven Summit application, as we told the committee we would. And because of that, basically we were selected. We won by 1 point. There are some other points that are for architectural design that are awarded by the state mysteriously behind the scenes after you submit your applications. I've never heard anything about that in all the years working in North Carolina. I think it's just points that the state uses if they really don't like a design, that they can kill it. But generally that has never been a factor. To me, it's always been one on bonus points and credits per unit, although this year they're proposing to take that scoring mechanism out of the selection process, but credits per unit is still your first tiebreaker. So it's ultimately still going to be decided on credits per unit. But that's the real challenge in North Carolina, is you never know how others are going to underwrite their credit request. And so you never really know what it's going to be. And what's kind of ironic, there were 2 applications, the one in Arden, and then there was another one in Charlotte that had an unusually low credits per unit request because they wanted to build so many units. That actually drug the average for the whole metro region down. If those 2 had not been in the application, we would have also been within 4% of the average. So anyway, that's my analysis. I'm sorry to take up so much time, but I thought it might be relevant for the committee. It generally in North Carolina, scores are pretty flat, and it comes down to just a couple of factors.
You're muted, Sage.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said, and thank you, Sean. That was very helpful information. I appreciate it. And Kate, if you have your applause sign handy, we perhaps owe Sean and his group a congratulations for being awarded.
We spent a lot of time analyzing that credits per unit, and we thought we had it, but we pulled a lot of applications and look at credit request over the previous year in the metro region. There's a lot of analysis you have to put into those kind of things. But we're really thankful we were selected and are excited about moving forward. It's going to be a really great development and a really good location.
Well, congratulations. And I appreciate the extra information. It's very helpful.
Well,
Anyone have any questions for Sean on that topic while we're on it? Okay. So we have a couple things here. We have a spreadsheet and we have a staff memo of potential allocation and reallocation. And I think it'd probably be best at this point, go ahead and open up second round. And Paul, what's the gist here? We want to hear from the applicants, and is there a particular order?
That was our suggestion at this point, to allow the 4 applicants who came back with the letters of intent, offering them the 5-minute presentation, to verbal presentation to everybody. And we just put them in alphabetical order in a staff report or staff memo. So I think the first person up would be Madison, CHC.
Yep. All right, Madison, CHC, are you ready?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
We submitted a request for a reallocation of $40,614, which I believe was the balance of CHOTO funds that were remaining from the original allocation. And when we did our first round, when we were awarded $165,000, we still had an application into Dogwood Health Trust for $365,000 to make up the balance of both the project management and the construction cost for 4 replacement homes. And we were awarded that $365,000, and so with an additional funding of $40,000 and change in CHOTO, then that would give us the funding to do 4 houses. Our original CHOTO application was for 3 houses, housing replacement projects, and this would give us enough funding to do 4, along with the Dogwood Health Trust and some investments by Madison County. So not a whole lot has changed, just a little bit extra money to help us get that 4th project completed.
That's great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Chris? Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why I'm being mute happy today. I keep thinking I'm not muted, but it's got a delay. I'm so sorry. So did anybody have any questions for Chris? I was just talking and no one could hear me. So, okay, we're going to move on to number 2, which is Fairhaven. Sean, did you want to share any more thoughts?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So when Commonwealth originally submitted our application for Fairhaven Summit, we had requested a $500,000 funding amount. And of course there are a number of applications and that wasn't possible. And so our final award was a $100,000, which is great. We honestly can use all the help we can get. Since that time, we've had a couple of things happen on the underwriting side. Of course, one, construction costs have continued to increase. I think we had one increase that occurred month and a half or so, I guess, before we submitted to North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, and then another one when we revisited cost post-award. Cumulatively, it's about 11% cost increase, and it's for, as I understand from the contractor, it's based on a variety of things. Lumber's gone down, but plastics and material have gone up. Anyway, it's material, drywall and insulation, and labor shortages as well. Our labor costs have gone up a lot. Of course, we don't have final bid prices. These are just kind of the current as is today. Hopefully there'll be some relief there, but it never seems to work that way. It always seems to ratchet up every year. And so that's one issue that we've had since submitting our funding award request to the city. The second thing that we've found, which has been a surprise to me, is the investor community's response to income averaging. So, our development will be the only in the market, as I understand it from our market study, that will provide 70% AMI targeting, in addition to the usual 60, 50, and 30% AMI unit targeting. And the only way that's possible is through income averaging. Now, we had underwritten at an average AMI of 59%. The response we've had, the IRS apparently issued some guidance earlier this year where it called into question how they would handle compliance on units and made it much riskier in the eyes of investors, as I understand it. And so the response that we've gotten from investors has been not great, to be honest. About half of the investors we've talked to have said they just aren't interested in any income averaging deals right now until the IRS clarifies its guidance. And the other half that we've talked to who are interested aren't paying as much as we expected. Our investor pool is lower, and they're also requiring us to hedge against in their minds, the IRS compliance risk asking us to target our units more deeply, lower our AMI income average, which in result is lowering the amount of permanent debt that we thought we could carry on the project. And so it's kind of a 1-2. We kind of expected construction costs to go up a little bit, but we were not expecting the lackluster response from the investor community. So those are kind of our two factors. I mean, we have requested the full 437,862 that we understood is available. But to be frank, anything would be appreciated, and we understand we're not the only applicants as well, and we want to be sensitive to that. That the consortium's ultimate goal is to fund as many affordable housing units in the community as possible, and we're hopeful, we'll be able to have some success in some other areas with, maybe some higher equity pricing. We're talking to several direct investors that we're optimistic will help. But yeah, to be frank, yeah, we could use some additional home funds to be able to cover our costs and be able to close and move forward with construction.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that update. Any questions for Sean? Okay. Item number 3 on our list is helpmate. I think I saw April. Oh, there she is. Hi, April. Thanks for being here.
Sure thing. Nice to see you all. Thank you so much for the opportunity to submit an additional ask for some reverted funds. As you all may recall, during the original application process, Helpmate submitted a larger application with the intention of providing tenant-based rental assistance to families who are having to relocate because of an experience of domestic violence, abuse in the home. Our original request included 6 to 9 months worth of funding for those families that we were assisting with that rental assistance. The award was offered at a reduced amount from our original ask, and so we tried to serve still a reasonable number of families. Our original request was 10 for just 3 months. And so we're coming back to you now asking to have an additional $50,000 to be able to increase that term of assistance to an average of 7 to 8 months. We know that when survivors are fleeing violent situations, that 3 months is a precious short amount of time to try to reestablish a life, generally with a reduction in household income. The survivor's income may be negatively impacted because court processes are typically not finished during that first 3 months. That process just takes longer. And so there's a substantial amount of missed work that happens because of court appearances, counseling appointments, medical treatments that may be ongoing, getting the children set up for services, and so on. And so what we found is that a longer term of rental assistance in the 6 to 9 month range does a much better job of helping families find stability and security, so that we're offering enough support to really touch the need rather than just sort of scratch at the surface of it. So I'm happy to answer any questions you all have, but it is hopefully a fairly straightforward request. 10 families at rental assistance for an average of 7 to 8 months. That'll include some security deposits, arrearages, utilities, and those kind of related expenses. Thank you all for your consideration.
Thank you, April. Does anyone have any questions for April? Okay, great. Thank you for being here. Item number 4 is HAC, Housing Assistance Corporation. This is a 2019 awardee, and Paul and I were discussing a little bit about how we don't typically have a previous year's awardee on here for a second round request. So we may need to talk about 2 things. This is a second request for reallocation funding, but also whether or not we're looking backwards at previous years instead of just the current year. So if we could hear from y'all, is someone with HAC here? Is that Ashlyn?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I've met a few of you, but I'm Ashlyn Mccoy, the Executive Director for Housing Assistance Corporation. This is an additional ask. Similarly to Mr. Brady, we are seeing an increase in construction material prices, kind of twofold. This project was ready to go. And then towards the end of the year, we saw a high increase in the construction materials. So we are requesting additional support. We just kind of a recap, Cottages of Oklawaha is an 8 2-bedroom unit SRO style for persons with mental, physical, and developmental disabilities. We are working with Thrive here in Hendersonville to provide the supportive services. And we do have that supportive housing loan from NCHFA secured. Dogwood has also put funds into this project as well. We are working to try to cover that gap, and that's why we came back with an additional request. This was something that we were not expecting, and something that our community still needs, this type of housing. So I'm happy to answer any questions in regards to specifics. So thank you.
Ashlyn, is this the fullness of your gap? Is there a larger gap than what you're requesting from us?
There's a much larger gap. So I can be upfront with that. So originally in 2019, I think the estimate was about $1.2, $1.3 million for this project. And the most recent estimate that I received was about 1.9. So yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's okay.
Sonia, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, I just wondered, Ashlyn, if at this point in time, is there a waiting list for these units?
So yes, we talk to Thrive on a regular basis, and this will be specifically for their clients, and they do have an ongoing waiting list. And I think in the Western North Carolina region, there's about 100,000 people who are in need of supportive housing services. So the need is there.
100,000. Wow. Andrew Mayroon.
Ashlyn, I don't know a great deal about this specific population. Is this the only type of project that can really provide long-term housing for them?
Sure. So I can briefly, I'm not an expert on Thrive specific programs, but typically Thrive works with persons who are homeless and experiencing mental health or physical disabilities. And so they have a really hard time housing these people because of the needs that they have. Thrive also provides a voucher of sorts. It's not a Section 8 voucher. It's a different type of voucher. And they're able to use this on this project. And they're not having very great success using that in our community, just from, just all the housing issues we're all aware of. So this is one of the only ones. We do have a couple other supportive housing services that we do work with them, but it's one of the very few.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ashlyn?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So, I was just looking at the, something on the notes. Okay, great. So we've heard from the 4 applicants, and we now can move into a discussion based on reallocation. Has everybody been able to look at the spreadsheet and have that open? There were a couple, I don't know, depending on when you saw the spreadsheet, I know there were a couple tweaks to it this morning. You may want to look at it again.
Sage, can I make a request? Can we maybe share the screen with the spreadsheet like we did last time so we can kind of see it move in real time? Is that possible?
Sure, that's a great idea. I'm not sure who on staff might be able to do that. I know I could, but it usually comes from a staff end.
Happy to do it, Sage. Paul here. I may start out and then flip it to Jonathan if that works as the discussion all happens. But let me share my screen quickly. Hold on one moment.
Thank you, Paul.
So, Sage, if you'd let me know if you can see this screen. Looks like several of y'all are out here.
We can see it. Yeah,
Can you see
could.
this?
We can see it.
All right, I can go up a little bit on the volume. So right now, when we were talking earlier about that total of 460,362, staff's recommendations were 369,748 to Fairhaven Summit, putting their total award at 469,748. $40,614 to CHC Madison County to handle that Chodo part, taking their award total up to $205,614, which is the Chodo amount, and then $50,000 to Helpmate. And that adds up to the $460,362. If you go down a bit to this green, which was again awarded to the contingency that we now have extra of that $40,614, staff is recommending, and I can change these numbers or not, of putting an additional $30,252 into Fairhaven, taking their award total to $500,000, which was their original request for our one and only tax credit project. And the difference of $10,362 to Helpmate, taking their award total up to $110,362. We did not, HAC is a great partner and all the work they're doing, but we did not recommend putting any funding into their project. Of course, there was a question about eligibility and additional gaps there. But again, this is all a consortium decision. And with that, we can take any questions from a staff perspective, or you all can do your communication.
Thank you, Paul. Perhaps what might help, I see a couple raised hands, so just a second. Perhaps what might help is if you went ahead and implemented that recommendation on the spreadsheet. And yeah, and then, okay, I believe I have in the queue, Andrew Mayra and then Kate. So, Andrew, go ahead.
Sure. Can you explain a little more of the rationale behind not funding the Hat Cottages project? Also pointing out that this is a project that we funded 2 fiscal years ago. And, you know, I understand there's still a gap outstanding. And I also want to qualify, this is a Chodo project, correct? This would qualify as our Chodo investment as well? Okay.
That's correct. And
what was the rationale?
So as always, difficult with limited funding to figure out how to best support our funding. When staff reviewed the letters of intent, I think the big question for us was what it technically would not be eligible based on the language that was sent out. And we hadn't had this question before. So as typical, always a balancing act of how to figure this out when it comes to, you know, should we allow a letter of intent? Should we? But like other agencies, HAC is struggling. We'll talk about it at the end of this meeting to update the language. But with the additional gap funding that they had out there, we thought it would make more sense for them to come back for funding, home funding, kind of similar to what East Haven did for their tax credit project, and come back for a larger amount in December when the application's open for next year's funding cycle. And then as hopefully a good partner, continue to try to see where additional funding could be found.
Right, there are 2
but
points
never
here.
Easy, as always, to balance this limited funding.
So there are 2 points. Out of curiosity, would they be eligible for the ARPA home funds because of the community they're serving or the population they're serving?
Well, that's a great question. I would imagine that Transylvania County, or excuse me, Henderson County has ARPA funding. I'm not sure.
No. I mean the ARPA funds that we're going to reallocate, or the special allocation we got.
Unknown at this point. We've got 100 pages of regs and 4 what do you call it, meetings to go through. So we're trying to patiently work through that just was announced last week and listen, maybe, possibly. Yeah, but I don't know.
That's a good question too. I think, Andrew, you'll see item 5 on our agenda is talking about those funds, and I'm going to highlight a series of webinars that come up and try and get us on a calendar to talk about that.
Well, I'd say
I don't think we're going to know the answer directly today, but it's a good question.
And I think, you know, my perspective is, without full clarity on whether those funds are eligible, we shouldn't consider that project is eligible for those funds. And maybe it is, and maybe if there is still a gap and they come back and get some, but I think I'm going to work under the assumption that those won't be eligible and they need to get this from conventional funds. And the other is the technicality you're referring to, Paul, is that a HUD technicality, or was it based on the timing or their eligibility? And I think what I want to get to, and maybe we can get towards this at the end, was I believe there was supposed to be a meeting in August, kind of delineating what the roles of the consortium board and the staff were. But I would consider this project eligible. I don't know if the consortium board necessarily agreed that there were any kind of conditions on applying. And you know, I would consider this fully eligible, regardless of, I think the conditions you put on the second round of allocation. But maybe we can discuss that when we have that bigger meeting that Chairman Turner mentioned.
Right. And so two thoughts is, number one, we worked with you all with the consortium last year and even I think before March and January's meeting on exacting that language on who exactly can come back for second round home allocation funding. And it doesn't say that previous year's applications can come back for additional funding. It focuses on this year's funding that happened in March. So that's the breaking point. And you're absolutely right that at the end of this meeting, and appreciate you bringing up the home ARPA funds as we learn about that. But at the end of this meeting, I do want to ask that point, as we've all worked together on that clarifying language on who comes back in August, is should we open it up to not only the current year applicants that weren't fully funded in March or had cost increases, but previous year's applicants who haven't gone to contract? And that's looking for guidance from the consortium on that language.
Yeah, great discussion, guys. And we do want to have that meeting. You're going to hear us talk about a special meeting soon, but that's an additional special meeting where we talk about roles. And I think this is a great topic. I'm fairly new. This is my first year on this consortium, and I had to ask also, do we award to previous years? And there doesn't seem to be clarity. So it's something we need to talk about as a group and perhaps update language, policy, et cetera. Kate, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
So I think I agree with Andrew here, and I appreciate all of staff's effort when we had this discussion initially to come back with that language. I think we can agree that we probably didn't anticipate to be where we are now when we were developing those. And I did want to clarify if the consortium felt that project would fall under the special needs housing, because I know that's a high priority area in the plan. And so I would like for us to come to maybe a consensus on if we're going to allow that before we split up this round of funding.
On whether or not we're going to allow a previous year's applicant to apply, or whether or not they are a special needs housing. What did you want clarity on?
Whether we're going to allow the previous year.
So that would kind of make us have this conversation right here, right now. How about, I can't see everybody. It seems like some people are just icons again. Do your little thumbs up. Do y'all want to try and discuss and resolve whether or not we want to look at previous year's applicants right now? We had kind of thought of it as a, future meeting of policy, but are folks concerned about this? Can you show me a hand or a virtual thumbs up or anything? A nod? You want to talk about it now? Okay. All right. So we're going to interrupt our little allocation conversation here to say, hey, do we want to look at previous years? The thing that jumped out to me is whether or not we allocate towards someone we know to have such a large gap. I mean, if we allocate the funds, does this hinder someone like Fairhaven, who also was just awarded? Will Fairhaven be back next year saying, well, we didn't quite get enough? Are we starting a trickle effect? Andrew, go ahead.
I think the rationale seems to be shifting here a little bit. I thought the rationale initially was that they couldn't apply because they didn't meet the conditions of pre-application, not whether their gap was large. I think we just stick to the focus here.
Okay.
I don't know, and I think one of the points of having that meeting in August was that so we could clear up these items before funding decisions, and we haven't cleared them up, and I find it really difficult to disqualify this project for any reason. Let us, the board, make a decision.
Anybody else have any comments?
Well, two things just for clarity. This is staff is only for your role as the main role as a consortium is funding. So this is just staff recommendation. And we did work with everybody on the language to go back out for the second round in the emails, which is a link under 3B. And I can happily read that at everybody. Again, everything's a balancing act. We didn't, Ashland and Hack are great. We didn't anticipate somebody from previous years reaching out. So it was kind of after we made the announcement that there was funding. And so we said, well, we can figure this out. We'll put the, put that out there. But the language when it came to who could come back said, projects that were not funded in the initial round or that were partially funded in the initial round of funding, and tax credits, projects not awarded from NCHFA, et cetera, as well as CHODO projects that hadn't been allocated, or new projects from consortium member jurisdictions that are either not awarded any funding in this initial round. You all have that in that. So we didn't anticipate an application coming in from previous years. So I think it's a great conversation and something that we can, at the end of this meeting or now, figure out if in future years of reallocations, if we should accept previous year applications. We, would love to hear what the consortium thinks on that. This application came in, I think, at the end of August.
And Andrew, I hear your point about whether it's criteria or funding gap. However, like, here and now, not having had this conversation already, I'm looking at, when Ashlyn was speaking, I asked, would this close the gap? Would this get the project going? And there was an intent behind that question because I'm a little hesitant personally to award funding to someone that still has such a large gap to close. And I'm not sure if there's a plan to fill that gap, or we're just kind of leaving 100,000 out there that can't be utilized. That was my concern. Anybody else have concerns about that? Or did anybody want to speak to a possible different recommendation? There's not a different recommendation. It looks like we can move forward with this one. I don't want to just disable the conversation about criteria and whether or not we should do previous years, but I also don't want to derail this whole reallocation based on a conversation we might need to have in a different time.
Sage, I'm not actually clear on what you're asking us at this point.
Sure. Okay. I can restate. So there's a staff recommendation. We've heard a little feedback about whether or not this previous year's awardee can request reallocation, whether it's for meeting the requirements of the application or things we haven't really fleshed out, like would it close their gap and fund the project. So I'm asking if anybody in the consortium has an alternative recommendation for a reallocation, or if we want to move forward with what the staff has presented.
Yeah. So I think I would like to suggest that we award $100,000 to this project. That would fill our CHODO requirement as well. I guess I understand what you're saying. So we'll consider this project and this application as eligible, and then you're asking what the funding is. I think $100,000. The critical need of that project, and the community it serves, the fact that it's a CHODO project, and the fact that it's already received home funding, and it's. I have to be honest as well with both Buncombe County and the city of Asheville. We have local resources that these other communities don't have. I appreciate the tax credit project, but that tax credit project can come to us, to Buncombe County, to the city of Asheville for Housing Trust Fund. And the state of North Carolina, in their proposed budget, has an increase of $40 million for the NCHFA Workforce Housing Loan Fund to specifically cover the increase due to COVID cost on construction. So I think all of these are great projects. I think that one has more resources open to it than these projects in the two surrounding counties. So I would suggest $100,000 to that, but I'm just one voice here. So
let me ask a clarifying question. Maybe this is for Paul could answer this. So let's say we did reallocate $100,000 to them, but it's not enough to close their gap. So they're kind of still in a seeking funding position. What if it doesn't happen? And here we are in the spring, the $100,000 has been allocated and it's just sitting on the books as unusable. What happens?
Well, I know that that might be a better question for Ashlyn, but I do know that we do have a timeliness with home funding to a certain extent. To get to contract, etc. There's been some COVID waivers around all this, so maybe a better question for Ashlyn. Quickly to something Andrew said was another reason. Again, in this balancing act, I don't think anyone anticipated somebody coming in from previous year. There was no award for Henderson or Transylvania County. So that was another reason we were trying to figure out whether to move something forward or bring it all to you. And then quickly is just to say, city staff can bring back two versions of the second round allocation funding for when we meet towards the end of October. One, which is taking previous year allocations or applications that were funded and need more money, and one that says just this year focus. So we'll bring that language back to you all.
So my opinion is that we should fund the 3 smaller projects at the full amount of their request, and then the remainder can go to the tax credit project. One of our goals or commitments in this consortium is to make sure that the 3 smaller counties are taken care of. And this would accomplish that with Madison and with Henderson. The project for Helpmate did not receive anywhere close to what they requested previously. And it doesn't take a genius to know that the pandemic has exacerbated conditions for people experiencing domestic violence. So that's my personal take on this. I'm less concerned about timing or eligibility. The truth is the cottages at Oklawaha is a fantastic project that we've already put some money into, but that we have, and as a result, we have a vested interest in seeing it go to completion. It's also housing for a special needs population that is often overlooked, even in the affordable housing world, and that their need for housing is only going to increase over time. So that's my 10 cents worth, is we fund the smaller projects.
Good 10 cents. That's some good 10 cents, Robin. Thank you. So your suggestion is that the 40-60, so basically give us that 100,000 to Oklawaha and move Fairhaven to 300? Or what you said, fully fund. I mean, we can't fully fund Helpmate.
I mean, fully fund request 2, which looks to be $50,000.
Okay, not the 6362.
I'd be fine with giving the 6362.
But to be clear, you want the hack to get 100,000 as well?
I do.
Okay, just making sure I understood.
Sage, I think Jonathan's going to share the spreadsheet. Is that good now to just start showing some numbers?
Well, let's hear from Matthew. Matthew Table's got his hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to get some clarity, and maybe I missed it in the conversation. The reason that the request was only for $100,000, given the larger gap, was there any rationale for not requesting a larger portion of the gap? I guess that's kind of my first question, recognizing, again, as has been stated, the existing commitment to the project in prior year award. I think that's important. I think recognizing that balance. What concerns me, and it's the same concern I had before, given the volume of tenant-based rental assistance funding that's flowing through other channels, and these are special cases, but and special populations that we're serving through that. But all of that tenant-based rental assistance money is also Asheville Buncombe-based, and we're adding additional dollars there. So again, in equity and fairness, if we're looking for ways to distribute that, I don't know that adding additional TBRA would be something I would be fully in favor of at this point, given the concerns I expressed about that before. But that being said, I'm generally favorable to providing additional funding to the HAC project, the $100,000, but I would like a little bit of clarity on why it wasn't more funding requested, I guess, given the gap.
I see Ashlyn. Ashlyn, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. When I spoke with Nancy and Paul, I believe we started talking about my reapplication back in May. I know Nancy and I did. I was told then that probably the amount awarded for Choto projects would be $40,000, and in my perspective, that was the amount that I maybe should have applied for. That wouldn't cover, like you said, the gap. And I do know that there's a large gap that needs to be filled here. Excuse me. I am in constant conversation with a few different funders. We do have several applications out there that we are waiting to hear from. But that was the rationale. I know there wasn't a lot of money coming back in this round, and I know there are other projects. I'm happy to, if this, and to your point, Sage, thank you. There are contingent funds like outside of the home funds too, that I have to start using this funds by the middle of next year for NCHFA and others. So there are other people waiting for this project outside of the consortium to kind of go. So I'm happy if, I'm really glad this conversation is being held and you all are hearing me in this project because it is very important. If it's up to you all, I can come back in December and ask for more, and maybe we'll have some of the gap closed by then with some announcements. But the funding is highly needed for this. I hope that helped answer your question some.
Ashlyn, just I guess as a follow-up, can you give us a little bit more information on the time frames for some of those other pending funds? Like, is that going to be decisions that you would have by December, for example? And I think from our perspective, and this gets into the larger conversation of looking at our past allocations that haven't gone to contract, it may be that we're going to have to reallocate what's already been awarded as well if you aren't able to advance, is what it's sounding like, given other timeframes for other commitments. So if you could just kind of touch base on those things, I think that would help.
Sure. The other commitments I have to have executed by August of this coming year. And so that's for HAC DC, that's for NCHFA, and that's also for Dogwood. So everyone's kind of on the same timeline as far as funding commitments go for this project. Trying to think, is that the answer you're looking for, Matt?
Sorry, is that are those the ones that you have? You mentioned that you were seeking other funds. Those are the ones that you would have.
Those are the ones that we already have in the pipeline, committed, ready to go. The other applications that we have in progress, we should know something, I'm hoping, by December.
I'd like to, I'm sorry, Matthew.
Sorry, would that fully fill out the gap if you were to receive that pending application? Just
so that's $200,000 of it. And the other, I think the remaining 3 will be from other sources. Sarah Grimes and I are in talks about that, and Nancy recommended another funding source that I've reached out to.
Okay, thank you.
This is Andrew.
So wait, I want to make sure I heard that right. Just a second, Andrew. So you have several other things lined up, and should everything come together, this 100,000 could be the last 100,000 in that gets it off the ground.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I didn't catch that the first time. Thank you so much for clarifying. And Matt, great question. Andrew, you've got one more question, and then
I know we need to move on. This is something I want to put a pin in, and maybe we can discuss it later at the end of this meeting or in that special meeting we have. It sounds like there was a miscommunication between HAC and city staff, and I think that's probably the correct interpretation, but that diminished or depressed the actual amount she requested. I think this is one of these brass tacks things we can discuss in that meeting, that home funds are actually the pooled funds of all of the entities in this home consortium. We want to, I think, be very certain that people applying are not discouraged from applying for any certain amounts or for any certain reasons. But especially in a case like this, where it's a county who does put resources in and then lets another unit of government staff manage it. I think that's one of these things we can discuss. I don't want to hear about miscommunications that depress the applications or the amounts that people ask for. I think our perspective at Buncombe when we have local funding is ask for what you need, ask for everything, and then we'll make the decision afterwards. But it unfortunately has perhaps affected our decision today that we're only able to consider this up to $100,000 instead of more because of communication before this application occurred. So I think that's one thing we can discuss later, and then perhaps in an October meeting.
And this is Paul here. I'll look forward to when we get that meeting, Sage, which I think you'll call for 4 hours or a full day meeting for everybody. But just so everyone knows, we always try to do our best to remind people that the CHOTO application, there's the 15% minimum, but it's a minimum. And we always try to make sure we communicate that. Historically, the consortium has always gone towards that minimum, but it is a minimum. So all the money could go to a CHOTO, and we always try to do our best to communicate that. As well as we get questions all the time for people asking us to guesstimate what's available. What do we think? And we really try to steer away from that because all of that's ultimately consortium decision, but I take a myriad of calls asking me to guess how much I think is available, and we try to navigate that hopefully well, and always look forward to anybody who has a better idea on how we can do that. Just to be clear that the funding's available, what that funding is, but as always with everything and challenging times, we can do better.
Thanks, Paul. Matthew, one more question.
I was just curious. Well, I guess one comment is we have in the past, though I'm not necessarily in favor of that, also awarded more funds than were included in the request. So that's not completely outside of the realm of something we have not done in the past. So to say that that $100,000 cap exists is not necessarily accurate. What I was curious about, and just trying to, it's so hard with this setup, is there a voting representative from Henderson County that might want to speak on this project at all? Just curious if they had any input or thoughts about the need there.
I do not have any other thoughts to add. I thought Robin did a great job of summing it up. And I think all the questions that I have been adequately answered by Ashlyn. Like some of the rest of you, I'm torn between the propriety of funding something that came from a previous request in the past versus looking just at the present requests. But I am interested in, a discussion with the board with that, maybe at a future date to get that language resolved.
Thank you, Sonia, for chiming in. Okay, Kate, one more.
So I will say this particular project obviously is in Henderson County, but Housing Assistance does also support Transylvania projects, and I would echo Robin and Andrew's thoughts about funding them.
So it sounds like we've got an idea coming together. Maybe it's a good time to throw up the spreadsheet. Jonathan, are you there? Or Paul, who can load it up? And maybe we can get a draft implementation of 100,000 to hack. Thank you, Jonathan. And hello, Jonathan. And my understanding was it would be coming off of Fairhaven. Sean, sorry. Bear with us. Okay. So this is what I've been hearing in the conversation. Any comments or questions or differences on what others might have heard? This is what I'm hearing may have support going forward. If that is the case, does someone want to make a motion? Or make a different suggestion? I think we're there.
This is Sonia. I would make a motion to approve the spreadsheet as currently shown.
Janice, do we need any fancy language in there?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
It's showing as shown. You might want to, because not everybody's looking at this for the minutes, maybe
I'll just
say
show as shown. With Fairhaven Summit at 300,000, rural replacement housing at 40,614, cottages at Oklawaha, I can't say it, Oklawaha, 100,000, and rental assistance for helpmate at 60,362, totaling this spreadsheet as shown. You can see. And can I get a second?
This is Robin. I'll second it.
Thank you, Robin. Any comments, questions, or further discussion before we move to a roll call vote? Okay, let me get back to my roll call. Might be able to see you all on the screen. I'm going to go in screen order. Oh, Matthew, your hand is up. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to, because we kind of had that discussion, is just recognize that we are providing more funding than requested for one applicant and still falling short of the request of another. I don't know if we want to discuss whether to fund helpmate at 50,000 and move that difference to Fairhaven Summit. Just given again what was requested and that we're trying to fund that second round request.
Oh, now that Fairhaven is below their initial request.
Correct. Just, I didn't know if that needed to be considered. I know that there's a motion on the floor, but just as part of the discussion.
It's fine for discussion. Archie, you have Archie just joined. I'm not sure if Archie's having problems.
I had
Did you have a comment?
technical
Okay.
difficulties. I'm back.
No worries. Thanks for coming back. Matthew, my response to that is I'm wondering if the $10,362 will go as far at Fairhaven as it would at Helpmate. Do you know what I mean by that? I sense that I know Helpmate and Pisgah and Mediation Center. I recently had a meeting with several nonprofits that are losing funding in all other ways from the state level and such. So perhaps from more background than I know, I'm inclined to leave that extra $10,000 with Helpmate. I'm open to other comments, questions, suggestions.
No, and I think it's fine given their initial request and then the second request. They're still well under their initial ask. We were able to fully fund other TBRA requests and others at 75%. So they're still sitting at about 30% of their original request with that allocation. But again, just making sure that it always makes me not nervous, but want to ask the question when we're awarding more than what was asked for. Again, because the initial request was still more than this combined allocation together. I think it's fine, but just wanted to at least point that out. And then recognizing too, if we need to have any additional discussion about whether this creates a gap or issue for Fairhaven being, underfunded for their second request.
I'm concerned about that for Fairhaven as well, that we might be creating what has happened to HAC with Fairhaven. But anyone else want to chime in? If not, I'm going to move to a roll call vote. Are we ready? Okay, I'm going to go in spreadsheet order. Ben Woody.
Aye.
Archie Fertiller.
Aye.
Matthew Cable.
Aye.
Andrew Mayrone.
Aye.
William High.
Again, I'm just an alternate.
Oh, God, I'm sorry, William. Thank you. I'll learn. Sonia, you're muted.
Yes, aye.
Forrest.
Aye.
I never did hear from Karen.
Karen's here.
Okay, great. So we're going to record you as present as well. We missed you in the roll call. Eric.
Aye.
Robin.
Aye.
Kate.
Aye.
I think I got everybody. Okay. All right, then that is approved, and this spreadsheet as posted is how we will reallocate. I appreciate the lively discussion. I've taken some notes for our future meeting of who, how, what, and where and when we do this. So we have a couple more things on the agenda. We have a public comment. We're moving on to item 4. Were there any folks waiting? I don't believe we got any public comment ahead, but do we have anyone that has called in?
Hi, Chair Sage. This is Christina. We do not have any public comments and there's no one in the queue as well.
Thank you, Christina. All right, then we're closing public comment at 11:08. And that puts us at item number 5, meeting schedule and a potential work session around the ARPA funding. So if you click through on 5A3 webinar information, you'll see 4 key dates. They're actually coming up pretty quick. They will all have occurred within the next 2 weeks. I'm going to attend, I believe I can attend 3 of them. And I wanted to encourage all of us, and as well as potential applicants that might be listening in, to tune into these and learn as we learn how this goes. And then a goal for this consortium would be to perhaps maybe at the end of October, about a month from now, to try and organize a longer meeting that is focused only on this round of funding. And Paul and I discussed it could be a couple hours, 3-4 hours, So we're looking for some conversation around that and folks' availability on whether or not you'd be able to do that last week in October. And if you have any questions about these particular webinars or the ARPA funding and just anything in general, the goal here is to get an established schedule of how we're going to tackle this.
And Sage, if I can jump in, we've worked closely with our HUD field office, who's recommended that, taking our time and a deep breath as we read through the 100 pages of regs, as well as attend the 4 meetings. And we're asking kind of all hands on deck, $4.7 million for the 4-county region. That's a lot of funding. And so any help we can get there, we're definitely seems to be directed towards homeless, talks about some public outreach. I think the funds need to be expended by 2030, just picking up a few things, but lots of information and lots to learn. So whether it be a consortium member or a partner, the more the merrier on joining in on these conversations would be great.
Yeah. And this is
Andrew, you got a hand up? Go.
Yeah, I remember reading the letter in June as well, and it seemed like also domestic violence was one of the categories as well. And I know April's on the call, and I'm sure some of the other surrounding counties have groups that do that work as well. But that seemed to be an eligible use for the cost as well. And I know there's a helpmate shelter in the works. So.
Okay, everybody get your calendars out. Paul, we talked about the week of the 25th. Do we want to try and do a Thursday, which would be the 28th, simply because these Thursday time slots seem to work for us? Can anyone not do the 28th? Sonia, you're saying you cannot do it? But the majority of you can. Okay. I think we might, Andrew, go ahead. Oh, Andrew, you can. Okay, got it.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I think we need to just schedule this, and hopefully you guys can get to these webinars so that we can have a really fully informed discussion that day. What do you think? 2 hours, 3 hours? I'm guessing 3 hours.
Sage,
And
this
do we
is
want to
Paul
start
here.
at
We
10?
can set it up.
Go ahead.
We can set it up for 4 hours, and then if we don't need all the time for everyone's commitment, but we're happy to put for a half day, maybe 8:30 to 12:30, or perhaps 1 to 5.
Now, what's everybody's preference? These morning meetings are traditional. Can everybody do 8:30? Okay, so we're going to do October 28th. 8:30 to 12:30. It may not take us the full 4 hours, but we'll schedule it just to make sure we have the time. Does that sound good? Okay, and I'm sure City Staff will take care of noticing that meeting. And you have the webinar information in your agenda. Please do go look at it, read everything you can. Let's come to the table at that meeting with as much knowledge as we can. And that is all I have for the agenda. Anything else before we adjourn?
Yep, Sage, Paul here. We did think with the previous 225, there was a motion, just so the clarity is on record there.
I'm sorry, I should have let me know that.
That's okay.
So because of the, let's see, so I've got a motion here. So we're jumping back to this reallocation, the 202,500, the math we were talking about early on in the meeting. Everyone know what I'm talking about? We're going to make a motion here at the end. I forgot this was a process thing. So we do need to make a motion that the fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 21-22 action plans should be amended and to correct and properly assign $225,000 in home project income received from Battery Park Apartments in the fiscal year 18-19 program year. As a result, the 10% reallocation of $22,500 for home admin will be removed from the fiscal year 2021 action plan. The remaining $202,500 will also be removed from the fiscal year 2021 action plan, but the affected awards will be funded with the same amount from available fiscal year 21-22 funds. Can I get a second?
This has been second.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, discussions? Everybody followed where we were. We should have tackled that earlier. It was a late noted thing that we needed to vote on. I'm sorry. Okay, we're going to do one final roll call vote. Get you back up. William High, I'm just kidding. Ben Woody.
Aye.
Everybody's listening. That's good. Archie,
Aye.
Matthew Cable,
Aye.
Andrew Mayrone,
Aye.
Sonia,
Aye.
Forrest,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Robin,
Aye.
and Kate.
Aye.
And myself, Sage, aye. Okay, thank you for reminding us that, Paul. A little tidying up. And I believe with that, we are adjourned, y'all. Thank you for your time today. As always, we'll see you next month. Have a great rest of your day.